Ønsker deg i hjertet alle gode ting å si meg, så hva vil du mere? Gratulerer.
Du trenger ikke å gjøre det hvis du ikke vil, altså. Det er jo bare en lek.
Waiting I do when you love me so. I don't know what I do when make you love me so. I don't know what I be when make you love me so. I don't know what you see when make you love me so. And that is why I go praise your name. Jesus, I thank you. Well, well, Wello, wello. Wello, wello. Wello, wello. Jesus, I praise you. Wello, wello. Wello, wello. I go follow you, Papa. Wello, wello.
Good morning. My name is Opal Bennett. I'm one of the programmers with the Aspen Shortsfest Film Festival, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to some of our filmmakers who are here attending with us. So I will hand it over to you guys to introduce yourselves to the audience. Let's start with Tomisin.
Cool. Well, my name is Tomisin Adepeju. I'm a writer-director. My film played here yesterday, so very happy to actually be here. So.
And your film is?
Appreciation.
Appreciation.
It's a short film.
Yeah, my name is Fanny Ovesen. I'm originally from Sweden, but I am here with a Norwegian film. It's my graduation film from the Norwegian Film School. It's called Shepak. It's screened Wednesday. It's my first time in Aspen. It's wonderful to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Dekel Berenson, and I'm originally from Israel, but now I'm based in the UK. And I'm here with a film that I made in Opal called Ashmina, which is screening on Saturday.
Excellent. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for coming to chat with us a little bit. So all of your films are female-forward films. You have female protagonists, and they are covering a wide array of circumstances and ages. I'd love for you to give us a synopsis, a brief overview of what your film is about.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll start. My film, it was shot in South London, and it's set in this church basically there, and it follows this pastor who questions her faith when this tragic event happens in her life. And for me, because I was raised in a church, I really wanted to capture what really happened in the church. So, and it deals with themes around love, death, grief, and faith. And for me, I think, you know, my actress is incredibly brilliant, but I want to make films about strong female characters because I think it's incredibly rare. And I find that, you know, there's so much more feeling and emotion when you have somebody that can really capture a scene really well. So yeah, and we shot it last year, and so the fact that I'm actually here sharing the film is so humbling. It's only our second festival as well, so it's just really, really wonderful experience.
That's great.
So, yeah.
We like to bring the new hot films to our Aspen audience. So, and Shepak.
Shepak is about a group of 11-year-old girls. They're celebrating a birthday inside a public pool disco. And they are start to give each other challenges and create a game where they end up kind of pushing the limits of their power and their strength inside this disco. And the game escalates, and they end up kind of losing control. Yeah, that's what it's about, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun ride.
Yeah.
Ashmina is a story of a 13-year-old girl who lives in Nepal, and in Nepal it's a really world-famous place for people to paraglide, and she works next to the paragliding landing field where a lot of foreign people basically fly there, and she packs their paragliders for small change. And then something happens, and it escalates some story with her family and with the tourists who are there, and it's based on almost like autobiographical or a real story, or because I'm a paraglider pilot, so I was there 5-6 years ago before I was a filmmaker,
Right.
and I did my first solo flight there. So you jump from a big mountain, like 3,000 meters, and you jump, and then when I was coming down to land, which is of course scary, suddenly you have all these children running towards you. And I didn't understand in the beginning what they wanted. But then when I landed, they told me, "Oh, we want to give us your paraglider so we can pack it." And then very quickly you calculate in your head and you understand that you have a dilemma, because either you give them to do it and then you pay them something, but then it gives them an incentives to not go to school, basically.
Yeah.
Or you tell them, "No, I will do it myself," but then they're just there standing and you're doing it, and like they just came for nothing.
Right.
So, and actually, when we were working on the film, this guy came to me, and he basically told me like, "Wow, you wouldn't believe it. Like, I just had yesterday the same thing that happens in your film. Basically, this guy paid too much, and then it created the whole like situation with the other
Awkward,
children, and because we auditioned him to the role, because all the actors are non-actors basically. So we auditioned him for that role, and he said he came to me like all like nervous and like confused, and he had like a whole situation with the children, so it was interesting.
Yeah, it did have a kind of feel of documentary to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised to hear they weren't actors. So your film's protagonist is dealing with some challenges and pressures, right? You I guess drew the situation then from this experience that you had, but then as you built out the character's conflict, she makes an interesting decision. Let's put it that way, not to spoil it. Talk about constructing that conflict and how you went about crafting that world.
Really, it's really like a strange story. Like I knew that I was there, so I knew about it, and I thought it would be great to make a film about it. A year later, I was in LA, and I met with a producer who just came back from Nepal, and he told me, "Oh, I just made a short film in Nepal," and I'm like, "Oh, really? I have a story for a short film in Nepal," and I just made the whole thing on the spot, basically. The original version was different. It was about a man who has a relationship with, like a guy who has a relationship with the packers, and he's very nice to them. But then he has a fight with his girlfriend who's back home, and then he doesn't pay as nicely as before just because he's angry or upset.
Right.
And then somebody does something as a retaliation. So that was the original one. But then when I was actually deciding to go, I knew that I want to do something it has to do something with the actual packing of the paraglider, and something that has to do with the exchange of money, and so the story kind of like wrote itself, I guess.
That's interesting. So Fanny, these girls are not your average girls. I think it's kind of indicated through the title of the film. I remember when I first saw it in the list of films we were screening when we were doing the programming. And I thought, Sheepak, what could this be? So as you were saying, they kind of behave in ways where they're sort of testing power between each other. And what I thought was interesting was that you were depicting girls in ways that aren't traditionally girly, and that was really unique to see and interesting. Can you talk about how you went about crafting that kind of dynamic in an all-female grouping, and particularly young girls?
Yeah, definitely. I think like the idea came about because we were all an all-female crew ourselves, and the idea came about when we were discussing who we were ourselves in that age, and we had all like been kind of raised typically girly in the sense that we had like been, well behaved, taught to be kind of cute, taking care of everyone else's needs, be very, kind, behaving, pleasing. But we also had super, intense, interesting memories of kind of pushing limits, testing our strength, fighting. Maybe not as often as our, friends who were guys, who did it all the time, and when we did it, often we hit too hard or ended up pushing it too far because we weren't used to, didn't really know the limits of our strength in a way. And I felt that that landscape was really interesting. Girls not really knowing the limits of their strength, and trying to kind of exploring that landscape. Yeah. And also because girls have it in them and they have the same needs as boys, but they are expected to do it, and they are never depicted in that way in films, even though they do it in reality. So we wanted to kind of explore that on film and see how an audience would react to it as well. But of course, it was also like an ethical aspect to it, kind of as you were asking, how would I then do it with the girls? Because there are some kind of ethically crazy scenes, like for example, in this small sauna with a naked man that they are harassing, for example. And I was insecure as to how I would go about, making it okay for the girls. But they were, I was kind of talking a lot to them about, like, from an emotional, motivational point of view. Like, they are always doing, all the actions they are doing are from, kind of wanting to impress the other girls all the time. They are kind of, always in a competing situation.
One-upmanship,
Exactly. There are two alpha females always trying to impress the other one, and kind of, winning like the attention of the other girls. So they were always kind of, they always had this understanding of why their characters were doing what they were doing, and they were critical of their characters' behavior. But they were understanding why they were doing what they were doing, and with this man, I was like trying to kind of put them in the power situation, because I was afraid that they would feel insecure, but they were really in the power. There were 8 girls, and this poor man was going to be naked in front of them. So I was trying to tell them, like, okay, we need to be really kind to him, because he's going to be really insecure, this poor man. So we need to be kind to him and kind of take care of him. And I overheard this, one of them, sitting to him when we had a repetition together with him. I overheard her, sitting together with him, saying, "I think you're super brave doing this." So I was, trying just to make them feel secure, and I think they felt empowered throughout the whole shooting.
That's definitely how it looked on screen.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Then Tomisin, you depict a woman whose professional role has her in a place of being like a model in her community, right? As a clergy member, folks are looking up to her for strength, and she's going through a really tough time. And I remember when I first saw it, I thought it would be one of those like crisis of faith circumstances, and I liked how you actually moved it more into depicting someone who is in a posture of strength being vulnerable.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure that was intriguing to you. Like, talk about why you wanted to kind of grapple with that dynamic and maybe the challenges in being able to do so.
Absolutely. I think for me, it was important to make a film about a woman that I think is very important, because I think this idea of pastors not basically grieving in a sense. I find that I think they're meant to be really strong, and I think I want to subvert that ultimately, because I find that most pastors they actually suffer more, I think, personally, but I think this film really sort of like was inspired by my own experiences, because I was raised in a church, and our pastor is always seen as this incredibly powerful figure, and I wanted to sort of explore that because I find that they're powerful in appearance, but I think deep down some are really suffering. So it's trying to find that balance of showing the suffering but also showing the power as well. So that was really hard for me because, you know, my pastor actually inspired this film because I spoke to her and she told me that she lost her son when she was in her early 30s. So she really inspired just how I wanted to craft this character, you know, because trying to get that incredible balance where we see her, she's smiling to everybody, you know, she's this powerful person that is incredibly sort of like strong and regal, but deep down she's going through this internal crisis that I think is it's making her feel very, very sort of like weak, you know, ultimately. So I think I worked with the actress to really try and craft that properly, because I find that, you know, it's not easy, you know. And there was one scene where, you know, she had to cry in it, and that was incredibly hard because, you know, I think in our world we don't see characters sort of like crying, you know. I think
you don't see black women.
No, absolutely
Certainly,
not.
there's also that archetype.
No, exactly.
And I didn't want to kind of distill it down to that, but you know, a strong
absolutely.
black woman is certainly more what you see depicted.
And it's very false because, you know, my mother, I think she's, you know, for all my life, she's always been this incredibly strong figure. But, you know, there was one time I was 12 years old and she lost her sister, basically. And it was the first time I saw her really cry, you know, and it was such an incredibly sort of life-changing experience seeing that. Because in all my life, she's always been this powerful woman. But that 5 minutes where I saw her, you know, in her room just sobbing, was so it was just incredibly powerful for me. So it really changed how I saw her, because I find, you know, she has to be strong visually, but I think internally she's going through a lot of conflict. So I really wanted my film to really capture that balance where, you know, the church members expect her to be this incredibly strong figure, but really deep down she's struggling. But I think the main question I wanted to explore was, how can you love a God that takes everything that you love? You know, it's a very, very important thing that I've even struggle with as well, because, you know, God is there, God is loving, and God is always present. But when God sort of takes your son or your daughter or someone that you love deeply, how can you serve that God? So trying to sort of like capture that sort of internal crisis on film was so fascinating for me, but also very difficult, because as a man who actually, you know, loves God, I wanted to make it incredibly objective. Right. I didn't want to show her, you know, just, okay, everything is fine, it's all good. Right. You know, I really want to show her like suffering deeply, but her suffering is internalized. The suffering it's a suffering that I think we don't see, but we understand. And I think I'm really lucky that I found an actress that could really encapsulate that on screen. Because for me, she was the most important person, and if she couldn't really capture that, the film wouldn't have worked as well. Right. So yeah, I was very lucky.
So I want to shift gears and have you guys speak about the visual, the creative, in the constructing of your films. And of course, your film is shot in Opal and has a nice mix of really sort of smaller scenes when we go home with your character, and then very vast looking vistas when we're out on the jump space, and then yours has a very creative look to it. I'd love to hear how you collaborate with your cinematographer on some of the really wonderful color palettes that take place there. And then yours has a very sort of, it's like visually depicting grief. You know, there's a real heft to the look of your film. Share with us about how you crafted the visuals.
So, like you mentioned, it has like a little bit of a documentary feeling to it, but it's completely not. I mean, it's completely scripted, and there are non-actors, and this girl is not a paragliding packing girl, right? But I still wanted to give it that documentary feeling, and so there's only 17 shots in the film, so in 15 minutes. So almost every scene is composed just from one shot, right, essentially. So so that was a challenge, just to how to tell the whole story without cutting, right? And it makes it more difficult, because then if you don't have a good take of something, you can't just jump to a different camera, right? So that was a challenge. The real challenge, the ironic challenge, is that Nepal is just so beautiful that it doesn't matter where you point the camera, it's just gorgeous.
Right.
But I actually made the film less beautiful than it could be, And I was very conscious about not making it too beautiful because I don't like when it's distracting. You watch a film, it's like, oh, it's so nice, and you come out from the experience of the film. And sometimes, and you know, it's like, oh, the cinematographer and the director just wanted to show how nice they can compose a shot, basically. So I actually had a really big problem with my editor, because when I started to edit the film, he found like a footage that I took the last day just for the poster. Like I just took extra footage to poster and trailer and whatever, and I made really beautiful shots because they were meant for the poster. So then the editor found this footage and he just started putting it inside, and I'm looking at it and saying, what is this? So we had this really big fight, and I had to take out all these beautiful shots, and we literally had two versions. We had like my version and the editor version. And and I had to tell him, listen, man, it's just me, but it's so beautiful. And I told him, listen, I know that it's beautiful, but it's not the kind of film that I want to make. You know, it was a very difficult decision in a way, because you know that people would be super impressed by some of these shots. But, so for example, there's a shot where it's all shot in open relocations, right? So there's a shot where like cows are coming in the shot, and so there was one take that we just like had so many animals in the background and so many cows and so many chickens. It's like nobody's going to believe that this is real. People will be, okay, this is like this is fake completely. Like they can't have 40 cows there in the background and birds flying. And it was like cut. We had to wait, you know, just to have 2 cows really far in the background. Even that it wasn't fake, because it's just a relocation. Yeah, so this is a really fun experience shooting there.
And Fanny?
Yeah, super exciting. We were when making this film, I wanted it to be. I wanted to free myself a little bit from like social realism, which I had been working a lot with before. Just because I had been before really interested in like authenticity. Now I wanted to go deep into subjectivity. So we went just deep into the child's gaze in a way, and in subjectivity, and kind of trying to. We talked a lot about like enhanced rooms, and kind of. I wanted to kind of use like her feelings, like the child that we're depicting, using her feelings from time to time, and kind of enhancing the environments and enhancing every room. Like the room reflecting how she was feeling internally. Yeah. Sort of thing. Okay. Exactly. And I think like the further into the film we went, like her and also the group, their kind of common feeling of kicking on their power, like their the power feeling that they had was it was increasing and growing. Then like the rooms were getting kind of darker. The light was going from like more pinky and girly to more red and dark and more dangerous kind of. So we were kind of enhancing and making everything more. Subject, more crazy, like the more crazy they went in a way. So that was one thing that we were working a lot with, and that was both in like cinematography, but also in sound and music. And lighting. And lighting, exactly. Definitely in lighting. And we were also working, like, we were talking a lot about like the female gaze, since we were an all-female team, as opposed to the male gaze, which is like has generally been objectifying women a lot in film for so many years. Because we were like, it's an interesting. We were talking about a lot about it's an interesting like arena. Small girls in that age in like bikinis and swimming suits in a swimming pool, because like small girls in that age has generally been depicted like in stories about sexuality. In that arena in films, and we were thinking it would be interesting if one would kind of start seeing the film getting expectations, like maybe this is going to be a film about those subjects, and then it would end up being something completely else.
Right.
And
Subvert expectations. I like that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we were talking a lot about how can we use kind of the female gaze and a very like empathetic gaze in both cinematography, but also like in music and in sound. Kind of what could the female gaze be in all kinds of mediums, not only in the visuals.
Right.
What could it be? We were just like talking a lot about that in the crew. So, for example, in the music, we were talking a lot about like how could we use, for example, I wanted the music to be to have a kind of feminine quality to it, which was growing because they're being kind of destructive. The girls, they are behaving kind of destructive throughout the film.
Right.
So I wanted it to be like have a feminine quality to it, but which was growing a bit like destructively in a way, but also being powerful. And so we were just discussing those things a lot in terms of kind of trying to merge the visuals with the audio and
giving a very layered and textured sort of depiction. It was really well done.
Yeah, thank you.
And Tomisin?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing was to capture grief on screen, but capture it in a very truthful way. So for me, I love black films, but I think there's certain black films that really fail to capture the essence of our black bodies. But so capturing black skin very truthfully, where you see the melanin, just really popping on screen. That was very important for me to capture. It's key, And I see films that don't do that. I see films that you have sort of white characters and black characters on screen, and unfortunately the black skin it's not beautiful. It's always secondary. So I really want to change that because I knew my film was going to have an all black cast. So my DP and I, we worked very closely to really craft in a film that was incredibly dark, that was dark but also very still as well. So we worked on just basically locking off all the camera. So the camera doesn't move in the film, and that was important for me because, this character she is locked in her grief. She's trapped. Right. So I really wanted the camera to really convey that visually where we're just locked with her, So when she's sat down, like when she's preaching, she's just incredibly locked in this dark space. So that was very key for us. But also what was also equally important was making sure that the film didn't look glossy at all, because grief, themes around grief and death are very melancholy themes, so for me it was important that the film had this incredibly sort of dark and
very
melancholy vibe. Yeah,
exactly. Very
absolutely.
muted lights and tones.
So I think that was really key for us, and I think I knew that it was set in one space, which is this church. So I wanted all the extras, all the characters, just to be encapsulated in the space. So we're just locked off with them. We don't really know what's going on, but really, I think there's this sort of like sense of unnerving dread that's there. We don't know if she's going to explode. We don't know because she's on the edge. Ultimately, she's suffering so deeply that she's about to scream, but she can't.
And you do a great job of really encapsulating that, as all of you did. We're going to end on that. I'm going to thank you all for joining me and sharing about your work, and encourage you to come and join us for the rest of Aspen Shortsfest 2019. Thank you.